Hey, you've probably done this before. Maybe while lying in bed, maybe in the shower, maybe during a quiet moment in the day. Someone said something to you weeks ago, and suddenly you imagine the perfect response, the perfect tone, the perfect comeback. In your mind, the conversation finally goes your way, except none of it actually happened. And before you realize it, you've spent several minutes inside a conversation that only existed in your imagination. Most people call this overthinking. Some call it daydreaming. Others feel embarrassed by it. But neuroscience suggests something much more interesting is happening. Because the human brain is naturally designed to simulate possible situations, conversations, and emotional outcomes. The real question is this: if imaginary scenarios are such a normal part of being human, why do some people get stuck inside them? And what does that cost emotionally? By the end of this video, you'll understand why your mind does this and how to stop it from controlling your energy. 1. Your brain is rehearsing reality. Imagine it's late at night. You're trying to sleep, but your mind starts replaying a future conversation, maybe with your boss, a friend, or someone you care about. You imagine every possible outcome. That isn't your brain malfunctioning. It's connected to something neuroscientists call the default mode network, or DMN. The DMN becomes active when your attention isn't focused on the outside world, when you're resting, reflecting, drifting into thought. Researchers once believed this mental activity was just background noise, but later studies revealed something surprising. The brain uses these moments to simulate possible futures. It rehearses emotions, predictions, social interactions. In a well-known Harvard study, researcher Matthew Killingsworth found that people spend nearly 47% of their waking hours thinking about something other than the present moment. That means almost half of our mental life is spent in simulations. And interestingly, many of the same brain regions activate during vivid imagination as during real experiences. So when you imagine a difficult conversation, your brain partially experiences the emotional outcome ahead of time. In many ways, your mind is trying to prepare you, not sabotage you. 2. Why imaginary scenarios feel rewarding. Here's where things become more complicated. When you imagine a satisfying outcome, finally being understood, finally winning an argument, finally proving yourself, your brain can release small amounts of dopamine, and dopamine is strongly connected to anticipation and reward. So the brain begins to associate these imagined victories with emotional relief. That's why people often replay the same fantasy repeatedly. But a problem has been found with this by psychologists. Research by psychologist Gabriela Oettingen suggests that when people spend too much time fantasizing about positive outcomes without connecting them to real-world action, motivation can actually decrease. Because mentally, the brain already feels partially rewarded. The fantasy becomes emotionally safer than reality. You imagine saying everything perfectly, but never actually say it in real life. Not because you're weak, because the simulation itself became emotionally satisfying enough. And over time, the mind can confuse emotional rehearsal with emotional resolution. But those are not the same thing. 3. Your imaginary scenarios reveal something important. Now, here's the part most people never notice. The scenarios you repeatedly imagine are usually not random. Pay attention to them. If you constantly imagine standing up for yourself, maybe part of you wants to become more confident. If you imagine finally being understood, maybe you've been emotionally unheard for a long time. If you imagine being calmer, stronger, more direct, more respected, those scenarios may reflect the version of yourself you're trying to grow into. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as identity simulation. The mind rehearses possible versions of who we could become, which means your imagination is often revealing your emotional needs, fears, and goals at the same time. The scenario itself usually isn't the real story. The deeper story is the gap between who you are now and who you want to become. 4. The emotional cost of living inside simulations. But there's also a downside. The body can respond to vivid imagined experiences in surprisingly real ways. If you replay stressful conversations over and over, your nervous system may repeatedly activate stress responses, increased tension, anxiety, faster heart rate, emotional fatigue, even though the event isn't physically happening. Over time, this becomes exhausting. Some people mentally fight battles every day that nobody around them can even see. They rehearse conflict constantly. They anticipate rejection constantly. They relive embarrassment constantly. And eventually, they feel emotionally drained, not only from real life, but from the emotional weight of imagined life, too. The simulation that was supposed to help them prepare slowly begins consuming their energy instead. Now, here's the key idea. Imagination itself is not the enemy. Your brain's ability to simulate situations is actually a powerful tool. Mental rehearsal is used in sports psychology, therapy, performance coaching, and skill development. The real issue is direction, because imagination can either strengthen you or trap you. Here are 3 steps you need to follow. Step 1. Notice it without judging yourself. The next time you catch yourself replaying a conversation or imagining a future scenario, pause for a second and simply recognize it. You can say to yourself, "My brain is rehearsing something right now." That small moment of awareness creates psychological distance. Instead of being completely pulled into the scenario, you begin observing it consciously. Step 2. Redirect the scenario. Instead of replaying the same emotional loop, ask yourself a better question. What outcome would actually help me grow? Use the simulation intentionally. Imagine yourself staying calm, communicating clearly, handling the situation with maturity. Now your brain is rehearsing capability instead of fear. Step 3. Learn from the pattern. Your recurring imaginary scenarios often contain useful information. Maybe they reveal boundaries you struggle to set, emotions you haven't expressed, confidence you're trying to build, or connection you deeply want. Instead of treating these thoughts as meaningless, treat them like signals. Because sometimes your imagination reveals emotional truths your conscious mind hasn't fully acknowledged yet. So, why do some people get trapped inside imaginary scenarios? Because eventually the simulation can start replacing action. The imagined conversation feels easier than the real one. The imagined success feels safer than real vulnerability. The emotional relief from fantasy becomes more comfortable than taking actual risks. And slowly, a person can begin living more fully inside their mind than in their real life. But the goal was never to escape reality. The goal was to prepare it. Your imagination is not proof that something is wrong with you. It's proof that your brain is constantly trying to predict, protect, and prepare you for life. The important part is making sure the rehearsal eventually becomes reality. Because the strongest version of you shouldn't exist only inside your head. It deserves to exist in the real world, too. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more psychology and self-awareness content.